Hey everybody, David from David's Broken Note today. Today I had a happy little surprise. A gentleman brought in this lovely buffet, R13, and it's a brand new clarinet. A couple of basic issues going on, nothing crazy. It's just personal preference. They're pretty good out of the factory, and it's just okay. Now we're going to fine tune to this particular person's personal taste, and a lot of what we're doing is mostly just some like minor adjustments, preferences in tension on a number of the keys in relation to the springs. Just make it a little more comfortable. Admittedly, some of the keys are pretty a little on the stiff side. I mean, they're very quick in terms of reaction when it comes to back to one, so to say. But yeah, it's for some people that might be a bit more tension than you might necessarily want on a clarinet. So we're going to reduce some of that. The biggest issue that I really found with the instrument, which not a big deal, but it is something that I notice in a number of clarinets, the key rings when we get into the right hand, they're a little, what I would say, underset. So that way when my fingers close and touch the chimneys, that they hit the chimneys before the pad necessarily closes. So it makes it feel very squishy feeling. So like I'm pressing, it's not 100% sealing. There's a little bit of squish to the pad, but my fingers are rock solid meeting the tone holes. So then there's a problem to where the key rings, again, I call it underset. I need to bend the rings up a little or lower the pad a little, so that way that timing to make that arc to close properly is very smooth and very clean. And we'll plug it inside the mag machine. So today we'll be doing a little bit of that to test everything. When I come down to the lowest notes, definitely some keys are hitting just a tiny bit before some others. So not really. It's a beautiful clarinet. Oh my gosh, this thing is lovely. It's got the silver key finish. What is it? I was actually just looking it up on Buffet's website. So this is the R13, specifically the model, the BC1131-2-0. B-flat clarinet, stained grenadilla wood, silver-plated keywork finish, 17 keys. Fantastic instrument. Some of the specs, it might be a little hard for my camera to focus on this. I'm going to take a screenshot of this, so if anyone's curious, and then I'll put it up later on in the video. But, I was curious. I didn't know specifically which model this was, so I wanted to look it up and read a little bit about it. And so, very cool instrument. Yeah, I'll pop this up as a screenshot for the video later. So really, like I say, I'm not doing anything crazy with this clarinet. A couple of areas that are a little stiff, a couple of areas that don't seal 100%, and then as well, the gentleman who brought it in was saying the cork for the bell joint was a little too thick, so he's been over greasing, and I can see it on a couple ones. Like there are just some big old globs of grease on this, so the cork's just maybe a little tiny too thick, and then so I might sand some of those down, or I'll put the whole instrument together overnight and just let it naturally compress on its own. Sometimes that works really well too, so if I don't need to do anything, fantastic, but it's a little stiff. And we're over greasing, which we don't really want to do, in particular on a wooden instrument. It just gets all messy and doesn't feel great when you're sitting and playing. You're just like grease all over my hands. So nothing big, and so it should be fun. It should be lovely to sit and play through this thing, and hope you guys enjoy. I'll try to break down a lot of what I'm seeing and what I'm doing, and then really finally it's going to be plugging it into the mag machine and testing it out to make sure everything seals and is really comfortable for the player. So stick around. Thanks. I'm going to start off doing just some of the basic stuff. I'm just going to degrease the excess cork grease that's been used in order to put everything together. So I've just got Q-tips. I'm going to go around the joints and just get rid of a lot of this to begin with. A little just excess that we've got going on. Check the inside, around the lipped edge. I'm going to check the inside of some of the chimneys in case we've got a buildup of spit. Not much. I mean, I know it's a brand new instrument, but depending on how much this person is plying. So not much buildup, which is great. So it's not a dirty instrument by any means, just a lot of grease, and that's pretty easy to clean up. Whew. This joint always has a lot. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Let's check inside these chimneys as well. It might be hard to see on the camera, but this is just some small black and some small brown flecks of very likely just the spit that's venting out of these tone holes. So nothing terrible. I've seen far worse. Though it looks like this might have a little bit of a buildup. No, no. Okay, that might be just some discoloration of the metal. And if it's silver plated, I'll be able to come in with some of my silver flitz cleaner, and oh, so we can get that in frame. Okay, silver flitz cleaner, and maybe polish some of that up. So that should be okay. So one of the biggest issues the customer was expressing was just key tension, and I really like the register. That is just it's plenty of tension for it to play, but nice and light and easy. So it's quick, but it seals. So it's not it's not excessive. These guys are looking okay, but the one that bothered me most on the upper joint was definitely when I came to the A and the G sharp. And there's a gap in between the two keys. Let me see, or get that in focus camera. I don't know if you can hear that. There's definitely a gap. I'm not personally a huge fan of the nylon screw that goes between these two joints, just because, just over time, it's very easy for that screw to get chewed up because working with a metal screwdriver, so you got to be gentle with it. But if something goes wrong, you I guess I can't. I have done it in the past to where I've had one of these just completely go out on me, and then I have to heat up the joint, remove it because it's plastic. It'll just melt, and I can just get a new one. It's a little inconvenient, so maybe having a couple of these in stock not a bad idea. But I like metal. I know it's gonna last, and as long as it's being serviced every year, back it out, clean it up, put some oil on it, put it back in. It's great, and it'll last forever as long as you do that. Once a year. To me, that's not asking much, but just personal preference. But I get it. Metal's louder in comparison, but a small piece of cork underneath keeps it maybe a little on the squishy. Personal preference, just. Not a huge fan personally of the plastic ones, but I get why people do it because it is quieter in comparison to metal. But I'm going to take off these two joints. I'm going to lessen the tension on these springs and make them a little bit lighter, and then for sure double check with my feeler gauge that everything is still sealing, and then come back again as well to make sure, doubly sure, that everything's sealing with the mag machine. So right now, that's what I'm going to start with. Let's take these two joints apart. And I'm going to clean the oil that's on the keys, or the rods. It's a new instrument, so I doubt this oil is old, but whatever. I'm taking it apart. Why not? Might as well just do it. And you'll see if this turns black. A little bit. Make sure it's in camera. A little bit. It's not old. It's not great, but it's, like I said, I'm taking it apart. Why not do it? That one, same thing. Really on the threads, if that's in view at all. Okay. Yeah, not much. It's fine. And since I've got them apart, why not? Let's just do these tone holes. A little bit of dust. No buildup, so not much venting going on there. So that's fine. Yeah, nice and clean. Glad to see. And so for these springs, I mean, essentially, all I'm really going to do is I'm going to make them have less of a bend. That's really it. So pretty simple when it comes to a job like this. It's just, you know, I've got X angle, something probably in the ballpark range of about 35-ish degrees. If I can go closer to maybe 25, then I know it'll have less tension, and then it'll be more comfortable. So very simple repair. I mean, I wouldn't even really call this a repair. This is just a minor adjustment. So I'm going to take this little piece off to give me a little bit more room to be able to flatten out the spring a little bit. That's good. You gotta be super careful. These itty bitty screws and these itty bitty threads, don't want to lose them. I mean, I've got a whole bunch in my boneyard pile of instruments that you just gotta collect them because you never know. You never know when you're gonna need one. But still, I don't want to lose anything original if I don't have to. There we go. That's a few degrees less. It's going to be pretty subtle. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up or not, but yeah, it's a little less of of an exaggerated angle. So let's put that back. Let me grab my key oil. There we go. I really like Hetman's or Hetman synthetic. This stuff's fantastic. I like the needle applicator. It works super well for me. I'm not wasting an excessive amount of oil anytime I use it. Ooh, much better. And this really is just a personal preference. I mean, there's no specific thing I'm aiming for. It's just, does that feel better? Does it not? Does it seal? Yes, then it's good. It feels good. It seals. Well, then it's perfect. Just being super sure. That's good. 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. A solid bite when I'm pulling. This is a 1/1000th of an inch feeler gauge, so very thin with some mylar. Yeah, and so if it's got a really nice tug with only 1/1000th of an inch, it's a pretty good seal. So kudos to Buffet. Really nice seal with their tone hole and their pad work. So yeah, happy with that. This next one, I'm going into the G sharp. So this one is one of the blue steel. Oh, sorry, one of the blue steel keys right here. And so this one, you can see how it's coming off at an angle. Again, I'm just gonna bring it in a little bit more so it's not as far out. I've got a ballpark idea. I'll come in with just one of my spring hooks, and I'm gonna bend it a little closer, not too far. You saw before, there was maybe about a 32nd or so of an inch of a gap to where between this little hole and the spring itself, now they're pretty close to each other. So that should reduce the tension just fine. I got police sirens in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Hopefully not. I'm actually got a mic on so that I get some of the noise in the background. Hopefully is eliminated, unlike some of my other videos in the past. Ooh, much better. I mean, really, again, small, small bends are what I'm doing, so that way it just loosens the tension slightly. And let's double check with our feeler gauge. Checking right now, 6 o'clock, good. 9 o'clock, good. Come on. 12 o'clock, solid. 3 o'clock, great. Wow, again, kudos to Buffet. Great setup, or I mean, great pad installation. I'm going to close that gap, trying to be very gentle. And actually what I'm going to do first, I'm going to back it off, I should say. I'm going to back it off. I'm going to add a tiny bit of oil because even with plastic threads, I mean, you still can get a buildup inside of it. And I want them to be, I like the ever so slightest, tiniest of gaps between the two joints. I mean, like you can barely notice it when you're doing it at a normal playing speed, but if I were to slow it down, you could notice a gap. And that's just me. I like to be very sure that the G sharp isn't in no way, shape, or form going to be held up by the A, so that way I know that seal is sealed for those two keys. But personal preference. I mean, some people want them to be straight on. That's fine. I like just barely the tiniest a little bit, if I can. There we go. I like that. Ooh. Let's see, this was another key that he expressed has a lot of tension. And so we're going to have to take off a number of these keys to get to it because this one has a blue steel spring underneath it as well. And that's fine. No problem. Let's take those apart. Working from the top down, that section's done. On to the next one. Ooh. This rod was a little sticking. This oil specifically might be a little old or just has not quite aged like the other oil in the first two keys. Yeah, this one's actually relatively black, if you guys can see that, but you know, see it better on the cloth. Yeah, ooh, yeah. That one right here. That one needed to be taken apart before that oil gets way too thick and heavy, and then it just fights you. A tiny bit of resistance when I took it apart. Nothing crazy, but there was enough resistance to just catch my attention. Like, oh, okay, this one hasn't been taken apart in a while, even though it's a brand new instrument, which is surprising. So I could not tell you why that happens. There's someone out there who's smarter than me who could probably explain why oil in different places, you know, it gets thicker in some areas and not in others. Is it a matter of air getting into the joint and it's drying? The type of oil they used, could not tell you. But that's just what I've experienced, and so compensate by I'm adding a little bit of oil to the joint, or I'm sorry, to the rod, and I'm putting it inside, and I'm sort of spreading it around. But this also, so that way I can use the rod itself, is to help me pull out the remainder of the old oil, because I don't want to just put new oil on top of old oil. For the other keys, I didn't do that because that oil was okay. It wasn't a big deal. This one is a problem, so I want to do this and just kind of help clean out the joint a little bit, or clean out the tubing, I should say. And then I can check it, and when that color gets better, I know all that bad stuff is gone. Yeah, that's getting better. So this is, you know, first one, really dark. Second one, not so much. So it's getting better. So that'll be fine when I put it back together. I'm going to set these keys off to the side. I know other people who also like to use those, oh God, I forget what they're called, but those fuzzy little, oh gosh, they sell them with saxophones. I see them all the time. They're like, they've got a piece of steel wire in the center. I'm assuming steel. I don't know if it's steel. And then it's got fuzz all around it, and you can use them to clean the inside of keys. But the diameter of those are too big, so it doesn't fit in a clarinet one. I don't know if they make smaller ones, but it would be super convenient. But this works fine for me. For saxophones, I use those guys when I really need to, when it's like really caked in old oil that's just solidified and it's just not coming out. But for clarinets, this works great. It's a really small hole and tight tolerance, so it doesn't need a lot. See, that one's right here. Yeah, this one's fine. Yeah, see, I would assume all of this was done together, and so why is one key worse than another? Couldn't tell you, but yeah. Don't need to spend excessive amounts of time cleaning something. I'm going to keep going. I don't need to remove this key in order to get access. And honestly, I didn't necessarily have to do these ones as well. I could have just taken off this key in order to get at that one, but it just makes it nicer and easier to access everything. And since this gentleman is bringing me a much nicer clarinet, I like to spend a little bit more time and just check it out to make sure it works well and it treats that individual well. So this one's okay too. This oil isn't bad. And you know what? He's paying me a lot too, so fair's fair. uh, I'm just taking a look at the inside since I've got it apart. A little bit of oil buildup, possibly grease. So I've got it apart. Why not? Same thing with some dust. Yeah, you can see this black that was just on the body. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. All right. Ooh, that screw fought me a little bit. Really helps when you have a nice set of screwdrivers that are the right size and have a really good tip. Makes life so much easier. If anyone's curious, these are actually, I've got a set of these screwdrivers hanging out over there, those gold ones. Those guys I got from J.L. Smith. I like their screwdrivers. I will say, I'm not telling everyone to get them. I like them personally. For me, they fit my hand. I like the lifetime warranty on the blade. But I will also say, I have snapped probably 3-4 blades, and I've only had them for a couple of years, like less than 5 years. So is that me? Is that the blade? Couldn't tell you, but you know what? It is really convenient where I can just send them and they'll give me another one, and I just have to pay for the shipping. So I'm okay with that, but for somebody else, maybe not. I've definitely seen in some groups that other people don't care for them at all, and yeah, whatever works for you. Whatever tool helps do the job cleanly and smoothly, great. I like them, they work for me, and I like the warranty, even though they've definitely snapped on me a few times, so being honest. This one's got some tarnish buildup on the bottom of the key. Clean that up a little. Actually, it's oil. Yeah. That came off real easy, so that's great. Okay. Ooh, very nice key work. It's very pretty. I love silver. Okay, again, so blue steel key. I got a ballpark idea as to where it was initially. I'm just going to bend it in ever so slightly to reduce the tension. And I'm talking 64th of an inch, a 32nd of an inch at most, the amount of distance I'm changing. So really, really small amount. And then just test. And if it works, great, great. If not, do it again. That is the nice thing about these keys, that you know, if it doesn't work the first time, you can do it the second time, and third time, fourth time, until you get it right. I'm going to bend it a little upwards because it's got a bit of a downward bend to it, so it's kind of dragging along the metal, which is fine. It's not dragging on the wood, so it's not going to gouge it, so that's okay, but still, yeah, makes it a little easier when it comes to assembly to have it slightly raised up off the metal so I don't scratch anything or fight it unnecessarily. Not a big deal, but it's those little details that my line of thinking, if I can make it easier for the next technician when they work on this, and my hope is that it's going to be me again, but if not, that's fine. It's always nice to, you know, it'll be easy to work for the next person after me. Yeah, that wasn't enough. Better, but definitely not enough. I'm going to bend it a little bit more. I probably moved it close to a 64th of an inch, so I should have maybe been closer to a 32nd. And I know I'm switching between. I think originally I started 35-degree angle to a 25, and now I'm talking in 30 seconds. Like, sorry, everybody. Just there's no science to it. It's just a feel. It's a ballpark, and whatever reference point works for you, and that works for me. All right. That I think I like a little bit better. Better. Maybe still a little too tiny. Or, sorry, still a little too stiff. See, 6 o'clock, great. 3 o'clock, great. 12 o'clock, great. 9 o'clock, great. Okay. Happy with the tension. You know what? No. I'm going to go just a tiny bit more. So that time, I think I'm in the realm of I've moved it about a 32nd or so of an inch from its original point. So maybe I have to go just a tiny bit more, or maybe I haven't quite yet met a full 32nd of an inch. All right, that definitely moved it. That's okay. That's a full 32nd. That's for sure. The other one might have been a little close, but this is, yeah. Don't use that as a definite. Like, really. I mean, this isn't scientific. This isn't you should do it a 32nd of an inch of movement. No, just for me, my situation, my particular clarinet, that's working. Don't don't expect that to achieve the same result for yourself. Okay, that I like a little better. Still got a little bit a good amount of tension. Mm, no, no, actually no. Relative to my A and G sharp, it's still a little stiffer. So I would like it to feel consistent if I can, all the way up and down. It gets annoying as a player to where like one part of an instrument feels great and another part's just like, man, why do I have to fight it here? There we go. Oh, that was a big one. Gosh. All right, that one I'm pretty sure is going to make a big difference. I may have gone too far that time. Oh, so much better. There we go. Yeah, I had to keep going with that key. And actually, that might be a tiny bit lighter. You do have to factor in, and this is, somebody watching this video might have actually even said it themselves, like, hey, you bend it, but metal has a memory, it's going to go back. I'm like, you know what, there's a little bit that's true. So you kind of want to go slightly past where you want it to be and let it settle, and hopefully that'll go, I go down to -1 and it'll settle at 0 where I want it to be as a, ballpark reference. But I like that way better. All right. Is it ceiling? Solid 3. Solid 6. Solid 9. And solid 12. All right. I love it. He is going to be happy with this. That is way more comfortable. Okay. Let's start putting these keys back together. And since I've got it apart, let's take a look. Everything looks okay. But I definitely want to add oil on this one. This little screw was a little stiff on the coming out. Get you back together. Did I need to do all of this? No. Not. I said that earlier. I think I didn't. You don't have to do all these. I could have gone right to this key, right to that key, taken it apart. But I mean, again, just me personally. I'm looking at it. I might as well, and I'm definitely charging the guy. So I like to be fair if I can. And you never know. Sometimes you find things that you might have you don't notice until you take it apart. I mean, that's woodwinds in a nutshell. Just you don't know how bad it is until you truly like actually take everything apart. And so I get customers that talk to me and they're just kind of like, wait, why are you doing all that? I'm like, well, you need to. You don't know how bad it is until you truly take everything apart and inspect everything, and then you like really know what needs to be done. Because I can waste hours of chasing a small issue that was caused by something else just because I didn't take the whole thing apart. So to me, it just seems like the safer approach. Take it apart, check everything, put it back together again. Plus, just personal experience. I mean, I've messed up enough times to where just like, man, if I had just done this, if I had just done that, just you're not saving yourself time by not taking it apart. You're not. You're just in the long run, it's better for the instrument. It's better for the customer, and it's just personal opinion. Just the smarter thing to do. But it definitely takes more time. Ah, gosh, that is so much better. Yeah. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say that. That might be a bit of an exaggeration. It wasn't bad. This really is coming down to a personal preference in terms of, this customer likes A, this customer likes B. Both are fine. What do you like? That's the right answer. But for this particular customer, that's definitely he prefers A. I remember this. I had a slight imbalance of the keys to where the lowest was closing before, and that's coming up here at the crow's foot. So I'm going to bend it up ever so slightly. Too far. Yep, that little bit went too far. Yep, still too far. What I'm doing, so I'm trying to be pretty light with my left hand to bring down both keys. And what I'm doing is tapping to feel if there's any give. Does one feel more solid than another? And to start, this one was more solid than this one. Okay. Adjusted the crow's foot to bring it up so that way this one came down more before this one. So now this one's got a little bit of give. I can see it and I can feel it. And that one's solid, so I just went too far. Goes to show it was a really small amount, but it was enough to where the player, because these pads have very little give, they are stiff pads, and that's not bad. I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's just they are. There's no squish to them, and so it needs to be very precise. Oh. Okay, got a little interrupted around the shop today. So, I think where I left off. Looking at the balancing between these two keys. And that's feeling relatively good, but the real test. Let's try 6 o'clock good. 9 o'clock, not as great as 6, but still okay. Or 12. Okay, 6 is a tiny bit heavier. 3 solid. Okay, so it's a little bit towards, the pad is a little floated this direction. It's okay. It's not something that I would particularly worry about because everything seals. Well, especially once I put it in the mag machine, we'll get a better idea, but it's doing its job. That might be something we'll come back towards later and maybe do some adjustments there. So let's check this one. 6 o'clock, good. 3 o'clock, good. Oh, come on. 12, much better. Happy with that. I like this pad so far better than the other one. 3, solid. Okay. Tiny, like the 9 is just a tiny bit not as well sealing as the other 3, but I'll get the pad wet and maybe put in a slightly deeper impression, and that might help with that. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm just being picky, but it's fine. I'm sure it'll seal and play. It'll be great. Moving up, this wasn't an area of concern, but just checking it real quick. That's good. Let's see, coming to the other side, a lot of tension on this key, so this spring definitely need to loosen. That one's okay. That one's good. This one's got a bit of tension. So these two, I think, are doing the majority of the heavier tension. Yeah. So these two, and no surprise, this one usually has a lot of tension on it for this key back here. Tiny little bit of lost motion on this key. So right here, which is lovely that it's got a little bit of an adjustment screw. But here it is. This little piece of felt that came off, so that was in between the screw and the key itself. So that just came unglued, so I'll fill that in. I mean, I could just tighten the screw and that lost motion will go away, but then I don't have anything to quiet the key, and I don't want it to be loud and clicky, so, you know, I'll get this piece, or maybe cut a new piece of cork or paper and put it in here to fix that. Make sure I'm in shot, in frame, whatever. Okay, that's okay. And this was definitely one I think I took large note of. Yeah, when I come in and meet the tone holes, the key still is squishy. So there's an imbalance, or I would say what I think I said earlier, it's underset or under tension. So what I'm going to do is get just a piece of, actually I want to go the other direction, my mistake. I get this really, really thin piece of steel. I'm going to place it on top of the tone holes, in between the keys, the key rings, and the tone holes. And I'm going to very, very, very slightly bend this key down so that way it changes to where the key, or the pad meets and the key meets, to where it's going to bring it more like that. So then now the timing should be, oh sorry, that's reversed. I just had lunch, a little distracted. The keys, I'm going to bend up, so that way the timing is more proper in relation to the pad. So the pad comes and seals, and the keys are up a little bit more, so that way it makes the pad come down more, and my fingers meet the tone holes properly. So, sorry. Ugh. Terrible explanation on my part. And so I am really just doing the tiniest amount of a bend to it, to the key. Oh, and that already made a huge difference. That is fantastic. Now I meet the tone hole, very light tension, and it feels good. And it's looking pretty good. Just looking at the tops of the tone holes, because I am putting a piece of metal on top of wood. I want to make sure it doesn't make any kind of an impression. And it didn't. Everything, here, I'll try to zoom in. You guys can see it. You want to be very, very gentle. And it looks pretty good. So that issue was solved much quicker than I had expected. But let's test it. Come in with the feeler gauge. 9 o'clock, good. 12 o'clock, whew, really heavy in the 12. So the pad itself may have also been contributing to the squishy feel to where it hits in the 12, potentially well before the 6. Let's take a look, answer that question. And, oh, come on. Might be about time to replace my feeler gauge. No, 6 feels solid. Okay, no, it's just really heavy in the 12 and really heavy in the 6. A little bit lighter in the 3. Let's see the 9. 9, really solid. Okay, so just a tiny bit lighter in the 3. I'll add a little bit of moisture and reseat that, and maybe that will get a bit more even with the rest of it, but that's fantastic. That already made a big difference in terms of comfort and everything sealing properly. So, yeah. Okay. Moving on to these keys towards the bottom end. So I know, excuse me, I know I'm going to loosen the tension on these keys in the back. I know I'm going to add this little piece of felt, or at least another one, or cork, whatever is going to keep it quiet. I'm going to put in between these two keys, and I may not need to, but I'm going to relieve a little bit of tension on this blue steel spring. That I think might help at least make it a little bit more comfortable for the customer. So you can see how far the spring is coming out, or get a better shot. So it's right here. And so I'm going to try and bend it to where it's about another 32nd of an inch closer. So I just get my little tool, and that might have been about a 64th. And I'm going to put that back in. Let's give it a feel. I'm going to isolate. I'm going to bring this key down by itself and then feel that key by itself. Oh, that's better. Yeah, that made a difference. Still quick, still clean, just it doesn't fight me as much, basically. Yeah, I'm going to deal with that lost motion in the back. All right, so I'm going to take these keys in the back apart. Go. And already right off the bat, the key's coming out really well, but I can see black that's building up, so I'm definitely going to want to remove the oil on this one. See how bad it was. Yeah, look at that. That was instant. And it has some metal flakes in it too. Like these tiny little pieces of dust of metal. It had a slightly, the only way I can describe it is grainy or sandy texture when I would pivot the key. And I mean, honestly, it's the best way I can think of it, because for whatever, it's just, as I'm moving it, it's not as smooth as like what your brain is expecting, and just has a slight, just kind of a sandpapery feel. And yeah, I can see metal flakes. I'm going to try to zoom in, see if you guys can see it at all. See... Yeah, on this side, you can see some of those metal flakes. That might be from when they were building the item. Or somebody might have gotten in there inside the inside the tubing itself, possibly with a round file to be able to really smooth it out, and there was a little bit of dust left over. That happens. I mean, sorry, dropped my mic. Not really a big deal, but just something I'm noticing. And I'm not going to fault the company for necessarily missing something like that. That's pretty small, but could it become a problem down the road? It's possible. So cleaning it up, I'm going to take the keys off. I'm just going to run some new oil through it to hopefully get rid of as much of that dust as I can. And just help prevent anything potentially from binding or sticking or just not feeling as smooth as it potentially could. So one key at a time. Oh no, I can feel it. There is something catching, actually. So I think maybe at the factory somebody might have been working on it, and they just didn't quite get it all. Let's see what's left still inside. Not a lot. There's still a little bit left right here. But yeah, some old oil and dirt, potentially. But definitely something metallic. Oh. I just noticed. I don't know if the camera's going to see this, but there are shiny spots, kind of like lines, waves almost. I can see them with my eye, and I can kind of see them on my screen that I'm looking at, so hopefully you guys might be able to. But it's really, really faint. So that just tells me that there's something metallic inside. I mean, we saw it anyway, but it's grinding against the rod itself. Very, very small, however. Oh, I even got flecks on me. It's on my hands. All right. I'm not going to rub my eyes. I'll wash my hands before I rub my eyes or something like that. Get some metal flakes in my eye. All right. So I think I'm going to go at this, this tubing with a rounded file and see if maybe I can smooth it out, and then I'll come and oil this joint, or the rod itself, and clean the inside of it. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of work there. Let's test this one. So cleaned up the oil, add a little bit of new, and let's see how you feel. This one's a little gritty as well. So maybe both of the tubings they were trying to smooth out and just didn't clean up after themselves. Yeah, this one's got it too. You can see some metal flecks on the left side. I mean, they're itty bitty. Right here, there's some metal flecks. If you guys can see them, maybe, but I can at least it when it's in my hand. Yep, so that's just what it looks like to me. Again, not a big deal. It didn't feel terrible, but it's just something I noticed, and it's something that the player, when he brought it to me, he didn't notice anything. He was more worried about the tension that it was fighting him. This just could be a contributing factor. So I've got just a rounded file to be able to help smooth the inside of both of these. So I've got a smaller one for woodwinds, for like flutes and clarinets and oboes, and I've got a larger ones for saxophones. So super, super helpful tool, worth having if anyone's looking for them. Pretty sure I got these from either Allied Supply Corp, Music Supply Corp, or Farees. Both of them great, just worth having for sure, especially if you've got an issue like this. Yeah, I can feel it catching on something. I want to be real gentle. This is a pretty fine file, so it's okay for what I'm working at it. It might look like a lot, but it is a very fine file. Sorry, I got my microphone right next to my face. I hope that wasn't too loud for you guys. All right, I'll try to do that away from the microphone. Okay. Ooh, smoother. Yeah, it was little. Yeah, there was just maybe a tiny burr somewhere in there. There's still just this the littlest bit of something, but that's already better. That's already better. And that's already coming out much cleaner too. But there's a little bit of dust. But that's probably from me. That's not from, Buffet. So that's fine. I'll do that a couple of times, get rid of all that metallic dust in there. Oh, and that little burr. Okay, so what it was just, my own buildup of dust. So that one's on me, really. So that's okay. I'll do this a couple of times. Let's just clean it out. And then I think this key will be good. Yeah, that's already making all the difference in the world. So great. Call that one done. Do this one. Oh, actually, sorry. Wanted to do this. So what I'm doing is, so we imagine the circle, I'm essentially working the 12, then I'll work the 3, then I'll work the 6, then I'll work the 9. So I just do it slowly, sort of back and forth, applying upward pressure, applying side, down, side. So nothing complicated, but you're just focusing where I'm applying my pressure, basically. And it should just smooth out any high spot that might be there without removing too much material. And definitely the goal, you want to remove as little material as possible, because once it's gone, not putting it back. So yeah, it's catching, but I'm hoping it's just because of me. I don't want to remove much more than I have to. Actually, it almost feels like there might be a bend because it's catching in one spot and it's extremely smooth in another spot. So there might be a slight kink somewhere. Let's see, is it the rod? I don't think so. The rod goes through great on one key, but it catches in another, so... Oh, there it is. There's a flat spot. All right, I'll try to show you guys, but this might be a little tough. So imagine the circle right here. This is the tubing. Right in position now, how I have it situated, in position 12, there's a flat spot. So it's catching right here. So I'm going to try to bring in, see if you guys can see it. Really not too big of a deal, but it's there. Oh gosh, my camera's not going to be able to focus on it. Oh, there we go. So right at about the 12 o'clock, right now, there's a flat spot. If you guys see that, there's definitely a flat spot. It's enough for the key to work still, especially when there's oil, so the oil's probably allowing it to get by, but there's definitely a flat spot. So I need to round that area out specifically. Most of it's gone. It was just a tiny amount of material, not a lot, but this should make it easier to play. Now I'm kind of just, so we had a flat spot at the top. I rounded that, and now there's just like tiny little burrs on the sides. So I kind of just want to keep going till all of it's nice and round. Small, very small problem, but enough to at least catch my attention. And it could have become a problem down the road. All right, it's better, but it's still catching. So let's do a little bit more. Okay, still a little bit of a flat. I may have to go get a drill bit to really get it round. Okay, that's better. Right now, I think the worst of it is caused by just dust, metal dust inside. So let's see if we can clean it out, and then maybe we'll be done. Do this 2 more times, and that might solve it. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay. I mean, the faintest amount of a catch. But I think that's more of when I maybe apply too much pressure on the key, and so it's binding at the edges rather than catching on a flat spot. So that might be me. But that is way better than what it was. That flat spot is gone. So let's see if you guys maybe can see this. Try to zoom in. Yeah. So what is now right there? There we go. At about the 12 o'clock position. That was definitely flatter. That looks way better. Not perfectly round, but way better. So, cool. That's working. And, ooh, I wasn't watching the camera. It might have been out of focus during that whole section. Sorry about that. I got the camera off to my side behind me, so I'm not watching everything I'm doing right there. So hopefully the the constant narrative I'm giving is at least helpful to somebody. Okay, so next things. Happy with both those keys. Those are good. Happy with that. So now it's the spring tension, and come to think of it, if I had all that metal dust in there, maybe the spring tension isn't as much of a problem as I think it was, if it was dragging rather than having a lot of tension. I'm going to loosen them just a little, maybe not as much as I originally had intended. Grab another tool. This one's not quite doing it. Let's see. I got 2 different styles of spring hooks. I like this one better for this application. Gives me more of a pulling motion. Okay. I'm going to go up. It's kind of on a downward trajectory. That looks okay. Now while I've got it apart, let's glue this piece back on. It came undone. This might some sort of, oh, this is synthetic. That's why it's got its own like self-adhesive that was on the back of it. I was like, that's not looking like cork cement. So that's fine. Let's just add, I got rid of the old adhesive and I'm adding a little bit of new with some cork cement. I'm going to apply a little bit to where I want it to go. And then we are going to wait together for that to cure, and then we'll add the little piece on. In the meantime, let's adjust the tension on the other key. So this one I was on the fence on, but I'm going to do it just a little bit. Okay, I like that. It's better. Now that I've got these keys isolated as well, since the crow's foot isn't part of this section, that feels great. This feels a little stiff. especially in comparison. So I'm actually going to have to take this key off in order to get this key off in order to adjust that spring in order to put it back on and back and forth. All right. Side note, I get why. I mean, again, this is just a personal preference. They have these nylon inserts. I think they're nylon. I'm not positive on the material, but these nylon inserts that go from these levers into these keys. And they're great in the sense that, they're super, super quiet. But they don't. Yeah, same thing like I said before when it came to the top section with this piece. That if anything happens to it, it snaps off and you've got to replace it. I just prefer a piece of metal. It's just me. I like something that I don't have to worry about is gonna fail. So I might bring that up to the customer and let them decide. It's an easy swap out. Heat this up, take out the plastic, cut a metal one, and then so this is hollow right in here. And then you just get in some of those the spring-loaded center punches. And that's the downside. I'll admit right up front. That is a downside. I can do it on the inner side of the mechanism, the inner face, I should say. And because with that center punch, it's going to leave a solid ding because I'm essentially making that hollow area flat on the sides and it grips the key or it grips the rod internally. So you can do it on the interface, so that way you don't see it. But if you really want it to be solid, interface and outer face, and it does leave an ugly mark right there. So it's not for everybody. I totally get it. But if you can go to metal and if you can do the interface, then great. And if it holds, fantastic. I wouldn't solder it just because this is silver plating. And, you go anyone who's soldered with anything silver, like you just avoid the risk if you can. Avoid the risk of flowing solder on silver. I think I finished my thought. Sorry, another interruption came in. So, yeah, something to consider. I totally get why someone might not want to. It's a beautiful clarinet. You don't want to change things unnecessarily in the sense of that visual aspect. But as a metal component, me personally, I feel more comfortable with it. And it's not as though these are bad. It's just I've had a good couple of times over the years to where it's come in and it's been just sheared off because it's plastic. It's not going to survive long term. All right. I shouldn't say it's not going to. It's less likely to. That would be a more appropriate way to quantify that statement. All right. We'll get this little piece of synthetic cork on. Looks like synthetic cork at least. Okay. That's good. Let's put it back together. Oh, no, sorry. I got to take off this key and then take this key off in order to adjust that spring. So, getting ahead of myself. Get interrupted and I forget where I am. And we're back. Okay, so taking apart this lower section so that way we can get at that key. These guys were a tiny bit stiff, and actually I should be working with a slightly larger head. I don't want to chew up a key just because I grabbed the wrong one, or chew up a screw, I should say. Alright, and then we're going to bend this blue steel spring in. There we go. Back together. A little bit of oil on each of the screws. They came out okay. They don't look dirty, so the oil on them I'm happy with. But just put some new oil on since I've got it apart. And let's test. Ooh, much nicer. Yes. Combined with a second key. That's reasonable, especially for a pinky. Yeah, that's reasonable. I'm happy with that. I think again, I've probably said it plenty of times, this really just does come down to a personal preference. So it is lighter, it is better. Is it enough for this particular customer? We will find out. And it's just putting it in their hands, letting them play test it, and seeing if they're happy with it. If we need to make any changes, yeah, no problem. We'll do what we need to do to keep you happy. Oh, I did not get that key in properly. There we go. Get that in place. Oh, the other thing, I didn't say it, and someone watching this video might have been like, well, if you put in metal, this is going to be metal on metal, and it's going to be loud. What I forgot to say is that I've got big pieces of Mylar like this that are really, really thin, and then you just wrap the joint around it that surrounds the piece of metal that's inside this keywork, and it keeps it super quiet. Super, super quiet. So again, personal taste. I like a metal component. It's just super solid. It's never going to break. And there's easy ways to be able to make it so that way it's quiet and isn't loud and clicky. So it just feels like a stronger joint, and they're both quiet. So why not? I'll bring it up to the customer and let them decide if it's ever something that they want to do. It's because it's not something they need to do today. We could always do this later. It's fine. And if they ever wanted to go back, that's fine too. It's not a permanent change, unless you were to solder it, and then it's just like, what the hell are you doing? You could do that. I mean, if you want to make it almost absolutely permanent, almost, but just overkill, unnecessary. I've never seen that happen. I've never known anyone to do that, but I mean, hell, there's people do what they do. Alright, so far the tension's feeling pretty good with all these springs. We cleaned out the metal shavings or metal dust from inside this key. One last key, and then we can go off into the mag machine and just make sure that just because it feels good with a feeler gauge does not mean that it is sealing 100%. Trust but verify. I think that's the saying. I trust my feeler gauge. I just want to verify it's doing what I think it's doing. Ooh, that went in nice and smooth. That was good. That just right in. Nothing obstructing it. Fresh oil right through. Nothing's dirty. Yes. Ooh, that one's still. Okay. This one's still heavy. The other three, way better. This one by itself did not do enough. Okay, well, that's good. 3 out of 4. Take the key off again, bend that. So this might have actually been a good example to where I did bend it, and it's possible that it came back. Metal has a memory. So key back off. Okay, actually that might have been too far. Let's test it. It goes in much better than it did before. Yeah, those metal shavings were not doing us any favors. Oh, way better. Okay, nope, I thought I went too far. That's way better. Yeah, but let's check. 6, solid. 9, pretty good. 12. Ooh, very light at 12. That actually just slid right out. Nope, very obvious leak. Not even touching at 12. So that key needs to be or that pad needs to be floated entirely. Make sure there's not a tear in the pad. If I missed it, I was paying more attention to the key. I didn't check, to be honest. And 3, okay. Really heavy, pretty good, not good, terrible. This would, if I put this in the mag machine, this would almost be wide open. I would get like an 8, and it would just be air absolutely leaking. So I'm going to turn on my torch, We're going to float that key by, so right now it's sort of like this. Heat it up, float it, and bring it maybe a little bit back more, and a tiny bit off towards the 3 as well, because like I say, 6 and 9, they're great. 12 and 3, not good. Give me a moment. All right. I love this little key. It's really made for flutes, especially for measuring key heights. But since it's a really thin piece of steel and it's, I love the angle, it gives me the ability to sort of like float a pad very nicely. So I love it for clarinets as well. Sorry, I've got this off camera. I don't really want to set it up for you guys. It's really nothing fancy. I'm putting a flame to the back side of the key, or really the top of the key, I should say. So that way it heats up the glue, and then I can just apply a little bit of, no, not enough. I'm not sure what glue they use, but this one did not melt quickly, so that actually gives me confidence. I consider that a good thing, that it's something tougher. It's going to survive a California summer in a car, or even in Arizona, to where you leave it in a car on accident, and it gets so damn hot inside of it that the glue melts, which happens. I have it every year. I get somebody that comes in like, oh, we left it in the car, and it was 115 today. That means in your car it was like 130. So if you've got cheap glue, it's not going to do you any favors. All right, it's just beginning to touch, so we're going the right way, just not enough. 6 is still really heavy, so heat it up again. And then we float. Well, really, actually, I'm just pressing. I'm not even floating. Yeah, this is a really nice glue. It is stiff. It might be George's glue or something like that. I don't work with George's a lot. I don't know. I guess I've just stuck with shellac, which is what I'm used to. At school, I used to use synthetic, and enough people just kind of, laughed at me for it. And so I started trying other stuff. I don't know. At school, you get used to just trying things, and I liked the amount of time I had when working with synthetic glue because it melted at such a low temperature. And it was just malleable for a long time. So in a school setting, it's great because I get lots of time and I'm still learning. I'm still figuring it out. I don't have my skills dialed down. So then now that I look at it, it's kind of like, yeah, you start on this to kind of get the basics, but then you definitely need to move into something, shellac, something way tougher, something that doesn't have a low melting point, and when it dries, it is solid, or cools, I should say. When it cools, it is solid. Way better. Way better. Still really heavy in the 6 in comparison to anywhere else, but this is making a heck of a difference. I'm going to give it a minute and let that cool and see how it settles, because it's still hot, it's still malleable, and it's applying pressure on its own. And when it finally settles and is cooled, the pad can continue to move. Sort of like if anybody's a guitar player at all that's watching this, when you take strings off a guitar neck, the neck moves because it's expecting X tension, and then you put strings back on, and then it takes a little while for the neck to kind of come back and settle into place. Same theory, same exact thing. You just got to give it a little bit of time and let it settle, and you're good. So, let's see. In the meantime, let's check our other keys while that cools. Love it. So much better. So much better. So much better. Not bad, but I'm going to remove a little bit of tension off this one if I can. Nice and quick without too much resistance. I like it. I am liking it. It's looking good. It's feeling good. Let's go back to this key. That lost motion, gone. Lost motion, gone. So that little, the little piece that came unglued, lost motion is gone. Solid. Didn't even have to move the screw, which again, I could have, but I wanted it to be quiet. So glue that back in. It's great. That's good. That's good. this, I'm being fussy at this point because, I know what feels good to my hand, and I'm trying to aim for, this is a brand new customer. I just met the guy today. Hopefully this will be good for him. All right, let's check this key again. Okay, that's nice and cool. 6 o'clock, still nice and heavy. 3 o'clock, ooh, better. That's settled nicely. Happy with that. 9 o'clock, really good. All right, I'm happy. Hopefully the last one. Okay. B. Yeah, solid B. Not as good as the other ones. And I don't want to move it too much more because then I feel like I'm just going to lose power in the front. So I'm gonna add a tiny bit of alcohol to this pad and just let it seat itself because it's already applying enough pressure. I don't need to add a key to this one. So again, the third use that I use for this little tool. A little bit of alcohol to get the pad wet. I don't want to use water because the body's made out of wood. There we go, enough said. If this were a plastic or a composite, sure, no problem. Use all the water you want. But for this, I'm going to use alcohol. It's going to dry on its own, and it's not going to potentially move anything. So I'm going to leave that be. Just leave it be. That's good. Happy with that. What haven't I done? See, the mouthpiece. I think this is a hard rubber. Let's see. Zinner handcrafted. Okay, I'm not familiar. A G13. I'm not familiar with this mouthpiece, I'll admit. But it has a whole bunch of cork grease around it, so I am at least going to clean it up. Normally what I would do, and it's part of the process that we deal with school instruments in particular, and just walk-in customers, if you've got a standard plastic or composite mouthpiece, definitely not hard rubber. Or if you had a metal mouthpiece, I would clean it with some alcohol, just that way I know it's nice and clean and safe, but I don't want to potentially damage the mouthpiece. So I'm going to run it through water, and that's it. I'll scrub it, water, that's it. I'm not going to do anything else and potentially damage it. Yeah, I think that's really it. This is all looking pretty good. I'm going to clean this mouthpiece real quick. Really, I'm washing it. Again, no soap, no nothing. And then I'm going to get set up for the mag machine. We'll test the upper joint, we'll test the lower joint, and see how the progress is coming along. So I'll be back, and I'm going to set up for that. Okay, cleaned the mouthpiece, happy with that. Anyone who is unfamiliar with the mag machine, I got mine also from J.L. Smith, coincidentally. I don't get all my tools from them, and I'm not just shamelessly plugging them. But hey, if you're watching, I wouldn't mind a shout out from us or something, or to us. So, all I'm going to do, middle section plugged in. I'm going to plug in all of the keys, turn it on, and we'll test. And what I'm aiming for is about a 1. If I get a 2, that's okay. If I get less than a 1, even better. Alright, so the only 2 keys I am holding are these 2 with my fingers right there. And let's take, I'm going to leave 1 open so you can see that it's on. There we go. We got an 8. I'm going to close this 1 key is the only one that I have open. Okay, so I'm going to try, say, open again. And closed. Try to do a little bit of a lighter grip. Okay. If I go like crazy light, which would be, I mean, a bit unrealistic for, I think, a standard player, I can get a 2, sure. but without applying much pressure, I can get a 1 pretty easily. All right, now the real test. So that was with the plugs. What really matters is when you've got a player's hands, because we've got, our grooves in our fingers, and it can leak through there. So I pull out all of these keys. This one, the top and the bottom, that's all I've got in. Everything else is pulled out, including the thumb. And okay, I'm getting a 2 with my fingers. That's not too bad. That's acceptable. I would prefer a 1. This is an okay grip. I'm not too hard, not too light. If I clamp a little, I can get almost a 1. If I really clamp, I can get better than a 1, but hey, it works. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to lick my thumb, index, middle, and ring finger. Get a little bit of a moisture barrier. And lo and behold, light grip, I get a 1. So really, this machine is sensitive enough to where it can measure the air escaping through my fingerprints. So it's working great. Happy with that. I would prefer if my fingers weren't licked that I got to a 1, but this is very reasonable. It's working well, and I've had to do no work really on these pads, so I'm happy with Buffet. This is working out fine. The bottom one is where it's going to really matter, because we know we have a key for sure that was wide open, and so let's set that one up. This one's all the really big keys. All right, on, wide open, 8. I'm not using any plugs this go around. Not loving that. About a 4. Lick my fingers. Nope. 3. Not loving that. Okay, so that pad that was still open, still a little open. Sorry, that pad that was open is still a little open. Let me double check. Make sure nothing has moved since the last time I checked it. So 6 o'clock. Solid. 3 o'clock. Actually got a tiny bit worse. 9 o'clock. Same. So 12. 12 is still our problem, and that was just, it grips it, but it's a feather light. So this would have played, and the lower joint doesn't usually seal as well as comparison to the upper joint. Like, they'll be in the same ballpark. Like, again, I should be able to get a 2 out of it. But that's, it's not very often I find a lower joint to get 1s, at least in my experience. And even if I have had one that is at a 2 and I've had one that is at a 1, I've never once had a player notice a difference. So it's really, really small, especially when it comes to the lower joint. So let's, okay, I'm going to get my torch back on. I'm going to try and move that. All right, so my battery actually ran out on my phone while I was working it a little bit earlier, so I tried to stop what I was doing. What I ended up deciding that I needed to do to move forward, because the obvious leak in the lower joint, the pad that we had in this key right here, I decided to pull it out and take a look at it. I'll show you guys. It is fairly worn, and it is a brand new pad, so I'm not sure what was going on. But, not all pads are created equal, and that's fine. And I felt a little embarrassed once I took it out. I thought that they weren't using some sort of a synthetic glue, because it felt pretty solid, but I take it apart and look, I was wrong. It's a synthetic for sure. So I tried cleaning out a lot of it inside the key cup, put it back together. Now I've got a new pad just to put in, and we'll see if this does the job. So that's what I'm at right now to catch you guys up for what I did off camera. Not a lot, just basically pulled the pad out. So, gonna heat up some of my shellac. I'm going to put it on the back of this key. Why did I prick it? Two reasons. One, I've got a tool to be able to hold the pad in, so I don't need to take the key apart in order to put a pad in. And two, if they have sealed this pad in properly from the manufacturer, that if I heat it up too much with the glue, the pad has the ability to balloon. And if it balloons, it can burst. And if it bursts, then I've got a tear in the pad. And then it's trash. I just wasted $3 for no reason. But then, yeah, I guess you could argue, how does poking it not, in essence, create a tear? I'm like, well, I mean, technically, but it's a very controlled one. So that's really not a problem in my mind, and this is pretty standard in the industry. The other issue when it comes to ballooning, it can warp the pad, so then I need a flat pad to meet a flat tone hole. Well, it's no longer flat because it's ballooned, so this is the easiest and best way to manage it that's controllable. And so, like I say, I got my fire off onto the side. I'm going to add a little bit of my shellac to it. And we'll insert the pad. All right. There's some glue. Heat up the key cup. And then I'll install the pad, and then we'll float it. We'll get the pad wet and insert an impression into the pad. And then I'll give it a little bit of time to settle. So you see, by having this tool, oh, how easy it is to install. All right. I'm closing and then I'm lifting, closing and then I'm lifting. Why? Because if I leave it closed, depending on how this key is meeting in terms of relative to that tone hole, if it's off in any way, then it's just going to move the pad around. And so I want to very quickly sort of reset, float, and then the glue will move and then reset, float. And that keeps it relatively stable without wandering too much. And looking at this, the lip on this pad may have been maybe a little too large. I mean, I like the general look of it, excuse me, the look of it, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of movement in terms of floating ability, so this might not be the right size pad. It was the same size as this, so maybe that was the problem, is that both pads were just a tiny little bit too big. We'll give it a minute. Cool down. See, that's not too hot anymore. Let's see. I'm just eyeballing it right now. Get a little bit of light behind it, and let's see how the pad closes when it's meeting that tone hole. And it looks pretty parallel. Okay, let's test with our feeler gauge. Closes real hard in the 6. All right, that's consistent. Okay in the 3, okay in the 9, and then I'm expecting it not to seal in 12. No, actually better. No, that was actually way better than the 12. So, okay. If it's this before I've added an impression, it's not too bad. This pad, just looking at it, you know, maybe it just warped, and that's okay. Kind of a bummer for a new pad, but, you know, it happens. Put in a new one, and it should be just fine. So I'm going to get my little tool, add a little bit of alcohol to it, to the face of it, and I'll add it to the face of that pad. And since it's already a key that's under tension, I don't need to clamp it. So let's get some alcohol, get the pad nice and wet. Let that settle. Let's see if it's not hot. Okay, not hot. I'll let that sit. Everything else with this is coming along really well. I'm pretty happy with the instrument overall. Some minor things that needed some adjusting, and really nothing major that's caught my attention. I mean, if one pad needs to be replaced, it's not too big of a deal. But maybe, you know, annoying to a customer, especially it's a brand new clarinet. It's also about a $4,000 clarinet, so... To me, it's not a big deal. To the customer, maybe a different story. I bought something that should be essentially near perfect. Why is it not? No. Well, that's why you need to make friends with your local technicians, folks, because we are here to help. A little bit of grease on the body. I'm going to press in just a little. And that seems to be making a nice, good impression. Just trying to get that alcohol to dry. Or evaporate. I don't know if alcohol evaporates, but whatever. Disappear. Almost there. Alright, let's see how it's feeling. Checking 3. Oh, fantastic. 6. I'm expecting to be amazing. Yep, 6 great. 9. Way better. Oh, alright, 12. Come on, let's finish this off. Oh, fantastic. That sealed great all the way around. All right, so mystery solved. Just a bad pad, no problem. Replace that. Good. Let's plug this thing. Okay, some of the video didn't 100% work, or at least it didn't record 100% properly with my phone. So, kind of wanted to go over, I think, where I have some gaps in information to try and make it, just to fill in those gaps, basically. But I was testing the lower joint after I replaced this particular pad that was definitely not sealing. I just wanted to show you guys on the Mag machine, it is working so much better. I mean, I think beforehand, earlier on in the video, I was getting between a 4 and a 6, depending on my pressure. And even when I licked my fingers and got, a water seal, it went down to maybe about 3. So, not great. It's fine, but I think I was pretty sure I could do better. And so once I replaced that pad that was giving me the worst issues, and then, yeah, it definitely got better. So, let me show you guys. Turn it back on. And without clamping too hard, I can definitely get a 2, which is great. So if we call that more like standard, then, sorry, I just let go and right back. About a 2, depending on my grip. If I go crazy light, then I can go to like a 3 if I just let go. If I clamp it, then I can just about get a 1. So this is super reasonable, and that's with my fingers. That's not with me adding any of the plugs to like really, really, really tightly seal it. So that's sort of with the possible margin of error with a player's hands and their fingerprints. So just wanted to add that little piece because I don't think my phone caught it properly. I'll try to edit this video so it seems like the information is seamless. But yeah, lower joint, so much better than what it was, and it really was just that dead pad. We just needed to replace it. So okay, day 2, working on the buffet. So I wanted to let it sit overnight just in case, if anything came out of adjustment, and making sure that the pad was still sealing the next day before I ended up giving it to the customer. And of course, yesterday I didn't have my mic plugged in when I was play testing it, and the video didn't sound good. So I just decided to redo this part the next day because it was the end of the day yesterday when I was doing that section anyway. And so a few little things that I did off camera because there were a few spots that my battery died on my phone and I needed to get the project done. So little things that I did that really don't matter. I just ended getting up a couple more pads, reseating them. So really just getting them wet and then clamping them, let it sit overnight, and then come back and check and play test everything. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. Everything's great. Everything sounds great, feels great. The tension is holding just fine. It's really nice and light. One thing that I noticed as well, that the bridge key was really over-regulated, so then the top section was very much at a downward angle, applying too much pressure. So when I would hit the lower key rings, the upper key would close first, and then the right hand would not close. So 2 separate problems to where the key rings were out of time or the key pad itself was underset in relation to the keys. And then the timing that we had with the bridge key was also off, so it needed to be adjusted so that way it was comfortable. But it feels great, it sounds great, and now that I've got my mic in, you can actually hear it. So I'm just going to play up and down real quick, and hopefully my mic will pick it up. So, whew. Real quick and light action. Whew. It just speeds through it. Really nice. Really nice. I'm not much of a player myself, so if you hung around this long to listen to me really sit and play this thing, it's not what I do. I'm a tech, I'm not a player. It's what I do. But super light, super quick and easy. It's fantastic, and I think he's going to be pretty happy with it. Last few other things that we like to do. Oh, corks. I said that earlier on in the video. I was watching some of this and going back and looking at it. Some of the tenon corks, I spoke about possibly sanding them down. I just left the instrument all together and let it sit overnight, and that really compressed them, so I didn't have to sand anything, which is nice. So just leave it be, do its job, and it is fine. Especially the lower, the bell joint, which was the one that he was having the most problems with. And so what would I like to do? I'm going to switch my camera view. Oh, no, I can't do that. Okay. Just pivot over. What we like to do for our customers, when we're done going through an instrument, we like to throw on a case tag kind of as a thank you for coming on by, and so they can put their name and info on it, so hopefully you'll be able to find it. And we always appreciate you taking our logo around the world, basically, so thanks. We appreciate you coming on by. Another thing I like to do, once I've cleaned a mouthpiece, I like to put it in this material. This is, it's a plant-based material, so it's completely compostable, which is nice, so, not contributing to the plastic problem. And so that way a customer knows that we've cleaned the mouthpiece, it's sealed, nothing's going to touch it, so it's safe to go to them. This was really important to us during, the age of COVID, to where I play test an instrument, even if I don't use their mouthpiece, which I did not for his, but for like a flute head joint, when I would play, I wanted to sterilize it and then seal it and give it back and give the customer confidence that it's safe for them. So something we just stuck with, that, hey, if I've got this material anyway, it just feels nice and professional that I'm getting a customer's getting an instrument back that is clean and safe. And so that's what we're aiming for. So thank you guys for sticking around. Hopefully you got something out of this. And yeah, I look forward to getting the customer to come and play it.